Hey everyone. Welcome to week 3. Uh, this is lecture number 2. Out of this week, I'm going to try to. Fuzzy. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to try to record one more lecture this week after this on editing a person's essay 1, but currently this is the Intro to Poetry unit PowerPoint presentation. Okay. We're moving from unit 1, which was writing about short stories, to now moving into poetry. And we're moving really fast because, like, within the same week, ideally you're watching this after you've already submitted your essay. You're done with your essay, you can, put it behind you and you can watch this. Okay. Or you might be watching this waiting for possibly a third lecture to pop out. Okay. Either way, this lecture is totally on essay 2, which is about poetry. Okay. So I'm not really going to talk about the essay 2 assignment until next week. Okay. Just know that you are going to be picking 3 poems from this packet, and you will be analyzing those poems, and you will be talking about those poems in your paper. Okay. I'm going to go over here today things that you can talk about, things in poetry that you can discuss. I'm going to do some examples of analyzing some poems here. Okay. Then show you what you're doing this week, the other work. Okay. So let's, I have, if you go to our, oh, wait, I'm not sharing it. Let me share it. Share content. My entire screen in general. There we go. Okay. Go to our online classroom. Go to weekly folders. Go to week 3. The notes that I'm going over today, the PowerPoint that I'm going over, is already right here. Poetry lecture notes. Okay. So everything I'm going over, can be found right there. All right, the PDF. Okay. All right. Take a swig of my La Croix. I don't normally buy La Croix because they tend to be a little too bougie priced wise. But I went to Costco and it was much cheaper than the Kroger brand kind. Okay, so I went and got it, and this is fantastic. The limoncello. It tastes like lemon cookies. It's superb. And I'm not even getting paid by La Croix to advertise it. You guys should. Okay, poetry. That's what we're talking about this week. Okay. What is poetry? I'm sure you know. Okay. Poetry is arguably the purest form of writing. Poetry is a sense of the beautiful. It is art. Okay. Like art, it is very difficult to define because it is an expression of what the poet thinks and feels. It may take any form the poet chooses for this expression. Yeah, poetry is supposed to be totally artistic. And, a lot of us today have this idea of poetry that we think of like free verse, where it can just be anything. It can be a stream of consciousness. But like, or blank, even like more than free verse, blank verse, which is there's no rules. Blank verse is a relatively new, a relatively modern idea of poetry, where what has really pushed blank verse is the evolution of psychology and understanding the subconscious and the way that our brain works, and this idea of diving beyond our id into our subconscious and pulling things out and stuff, and having these like pure ideas. But like prior to psychoanalysis and psychology, poetry writing was a very difficult, elevated way of writing, where it took a lot of effort to, because you had meter, which is the idea of syllables and beats per line, and it was all measurable. And you had these different tactics of like internal rhyme or assonance and consonants, these things that a lot of people just don't even really think about anymore. And so like people think that like Shakespeare in the Elizabethan era, people spoke like Shakespeare would write, and that was not true. He wrote in a poetic dialect, and because poetry was always seen as supposed to be the most like elevated form of artistic expression. Um, singing, like singing is to voice, poetry is to words, to speech. And so it was supposed to be, very elevated and difficult. And it took people to be very educated to do it. Poetry is not easy to find, often takes the form of verse, but not all the poetry has this structure. Today, poetry is a zero barred form of expression. It's free expression. People write in poetry in order to communicate in a way where we don't always have to speak in complete sentences or complete thoughts. And sometimes, a lot of times that's reflective of like our emotions. A lot of times we feel things that we can't always put into definitive exposition. And so poetry comes in to replace that inability and to create this these feelings and these ideas in a creative way. So, people write poems about many different things. People write them personally. People write them about the past. People write them about themselves. People write about issues and topics and current events. You can have a fixed form, which is like a iambic pentameter, a sonnet, a haiku, these types of things, or it can be just total free form. It can have some rhyme, it can have no rhyme. It can utilize allusions, or it won't. It can include symbolism, or it might not. It can have meaning, or it can be void of meaning. A fixed form is a poem that may be categorized by the pattern of its lines, meter, rhythm, or stanzas. A style of poetry that has set rules, I could just say. And free form is it's all is okay. You do what you do. Is poetry written without the proper rules about form, rhythm, rhyme, meter? Okay. Okay, lines and stanzas. So these are important because when you are writing about your poems in your paper, you need to refer to the lines and possibly stanzas. Now, in your citations, if you are quoting a book, you would include page numbers. Now, for paper one, a lot of you were using online. I'm pretty sure all of you were using online sources, so you didn't even use page numbers. Okay, so this will be a new change for you. In paper two, when you quote poetry, you have to include the line numbers. So you have to know how to understand those. So the basic unit of poetry is the line. It serves the same function as the sentence in prose, although most poetry maintains the use of grammar within the structure of the poem. Lines are also often grouped into stanzas, chunks. So like a stanza is like a paragraph of poetry. Lines are, it sounds like each individual line. So let's look at this poem. Last night, I went out walking. The line numbers are in parentheses. Last night, I went out walking, out on the edge of town, not going no place special, only wandering around. I came upon a river. I thought about what you said and couldn't stop it flowing and running through my head. You said that I'm teaching and never seemed to laugh, but I can't recall the last time you smiled, and it's tearing me in half. I want to run and tell you, sorry about my little things in the way. I want to run and tell you the thoughts that are in my head, but I don't think that you'd believe a single word I said. The river's waters run so cool, and it calms my burning skin. It takes away my aching thoughts and cleanses all of my sin. So let it flow on, take me down, to sleep that quiet sleep, and roll my body back to you. My love, you may always keep it. So this poem has 24 lines. If you were to quote any part of this poem, you would need to put in parentheses, the line number, okay? So whenever you pick the poems that you are going to write about, you should go ahead and number the lines. That way you know which lines. And like some poems might only have like one word, but even this one word on a line, that's a line number, okay? So this has 24 lines. How many stanzas does it have? What do you think? What do you think? Well, if you got 6, then you are correct. Okay, it has 6 stanzas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like your paper, you might be like, stanza 5. When Rennie writes, the river's waters run so cool, it calms my burning skin, parentheses 17 to 18. She is referring to blah, 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 blah. You don't have to cite the stanza in your paper. You would just have to cite the page numbers, which I'll go over more later. All right, so these are the things that you can talk about in your paper, okay? You are not talking about every single thing. You're gonna pick 3 poems, and you're gonna discuss one thing about each poem. Okay, and these are the different things in which you can discuss. It's all figurative language. Whenever you describe something by comparing it with something else, you're using figurative language. Figurative language is any language that goes beyond the literal meaning of words in order to furnish new effects or fresh insights into the idea or a subject. The most common figures of speech are simile, metaphor, and alliteration. Figurative language is used in poetry to compare 2 things that are usually not thought of as being alike. That's not always true, though. Okay. First, we have simile. Maybe you feel like the whole poem is a big giant simile. The comparison using like or as. Great animation. As brave as a lion, as dumb as an ox. These are similes. A metaphor, a figure of speech in which one thing is spoken as though it were something else. A direct comparison of 2 unlike things. Clouds are cotton candy. Grandpa was a mule. Tom is a rock. And something we called an extended metaphor is when the whole poem is a metaphor. And the whole poem carries on this thing. So like, there's a poem called, it's not called Fences. I think it's called Fences. I don't think it's called Fences. It might be called Fences. I don't think it is a Fence. I don't think it's called. It's by Robert Frost. Mending Wall. There it is. Poem called Mending Wall, and it's about this wall that's being mended. And the very end says, "Fences make good friends." Okay, and so this wall that is discussed as the boundary between these 2 properties, it's an extended metaphor. While the poem is about a wall that seems to be falling apart, but then being fixed by 2 people who seem like they're not cool with each other, yet they come together to this wall. Okay, it's a metaphor. It's a big metaphor about boundaries. Boundaries are really good for all relationships. Okay, and they need to be respected. Okay, and that they allow you to be able to have low conflict with people in your life, yet still be able to be friendly. It's a one big giant metaphor. Okay, so the whole poem is a metaphor. It's like one metaphor over the whole thing. Okay, that's an extended metaphor. Okay. Personification, figurative language in which a non-human subject is given human characteristics. The wind gently called her name. Personification. If you are a Greek scholar, okay, you would know that both the Greeks and the Old Testament Jews used the idea of a woman named Sophia as the personification of wisdom, and that while in the Old Testament it doesn't actually cite Sophia, but it does personify wisdom as a woman. In Greece, so she was given a name. The Greeks referred to wisdom as Sophia, which is why we have the words philosophy, which is phil is the love, and Sophie is Sophia, so it's which means wisdom. So a philosopher is one who loves wisdom. But like they use personification to talk about her and like about how like she is patient and she's kind and she is slow to anger, and you have to take care of her and you have to listen to her and respect her, and you have to nurture the relationship. It's not easy. Okay. And these are all things about wisdom. All right. So there's a lot of, so like the whole poem could be personifying something, a topic. Imagery. Usually these words or phrases create a picture in the reader's mind. Some imagery appeals to the other five senses. Okay. Sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. Okay. Yeah. Here's a poem. I think it's called My Grandfather's Hands. And it's about a kid who wakes up, and it's just about, I don't know if it's called my Grandfather's Hands, but anyways, he wakes up and he just talks about all of the sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste of like early morning risings with his grandfather, and like the food and the smell and what he saw. And the whole point of the poem is to create this real sense of like comfort and being taken care of, and like trust that like the speaker has towards his grandfather. Okay. And it's a sweet poem, but it's also a sad poem because the grandfather was like died, and this person is an adult reflecting back to their childhood and how comforted and safe they felt. And so the poet uses imagery to create all of these senses, all the sense in the reader of feeling safe and secure through what they see, what they smell, what the food tastes like, the softness, all those kind of things. Tone. Watch your tone, kid. Watch it. The author's attitude about a subject. That is tone. This is implied throughout the work. Okay. Robert Frost, again, says here in this poem, The Road Not Taken, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. That has made all the difference. Frost is commonly interpreted as looking back on this experience with joy. And that is true if you were to speak those lines truthfully. However, imagine that he actually sighs when he says sigh, and he appears solo when he says, and that has made all the difference. The entire meaning of the poem has changed, and Frost is indeed not thrilled with the choice he made in the past. Turns out everyone who was taking that path, they were on the right path. And I took this path. Well, that just explains why. So, yeah. People always are like, oh, the road not taken, you should take it like Robert Frost. He's not really saying that. If you listen to his tone is that was a poor decision. Symbolism. The practice of representing things by means of symbols. or of attributing symbolic meanings or significance to objects, events, or relationships. A person, place, or thing or idea that stands for something else. They are used deliberately to reinforce meaning. Okay, I'm not gonna rush, but I have 15 minutes to get through these next several slides. So I'm gonna speak relatively a lot about symbolism and the next one also, which is theme. Okay. Symbol may have more than one meaning, or its meaning may change from the beginning to the end of a literary work. There might be a personal symbolism, contextual, the private meaning created by an author, or cultural symbolism, like issues. Okay. Then there's theme, the main idea or message of a literary work. This is the most important. Look, I really want you to talk about. I would really like just like if you talked about theme in all of the poems and how the symbolism or the tone or the metaphors contribute to the theme of the poems. What's at the deeper message of the poem? Okay. And then you can discuss, how the theme is created or communicated. Okay, it's the overall message, the idea expressed in the poem, a significant statement the story is making about society, human nature, or the human condition. Theme is not the subject of the work, but instead it's an insight about life or human nature. A complete idea, it's a statement, an idea. Theme is idea, okay? And it has to be expressed directly in a complete sentence. Implied theme is one that you have to kind of like pull out, okay? Some themes are obvious, some things are not obvious, okay? So, for some writers, theme is just as important to grasp, if not more, than the events of the story. The poems that I've selected for you that you're going to choose from, they're all heavy on theme. They're all theme heavy. I'm not just giving you a story. Like, oh, that was a story that rhymes. No, they're all thematic. Okay, theme is like really important. Many authors begin with a thematic concept and then create a story to communicate their theme. The theme of a story or poem can be conveyed using characters, setting, dialogue, plot, or a combination of all of these, okay? So, like, you could just focus on symbolism and theme in all three poems. Every poem that you read, that you write about, three of them, you focus on symbolism and theme. That would be awesome. And this is how you pull theme out through discussing the symbolism. So you want to begin with understanding that theme can be communicated through literal events and dialogue in a text. Sometimes it's like in your face. Like, for example, The Hate You Give is literally about police brutality. This is not a hidden theme. This theme is very obvious. If you read the book or saw the movie, it is about police brutality. There's no way of getting around that, okay? But theme can also be communicated through metaphor. Plot, characters, and situations can all be symbols used to convey a deeper meaning. Such as the poem that we're about to read called House in the World by Langston Hughes. I love this poem. He says, I'm looking for a house in the world where the white shadows will not fall. There is no such house, dark brothers. No such house at all. Those symbols. We have house, we have white shadows, we have a tone of pessimism. He is not optimistic. So let's dissect this. Identify the literal object the symbol is, which is here. A house is a place of residency where one resides. And then the figurative representation of the symbol. A house symbolizes a place where one feels safe, secure, and belonging. It should. Doesn't always. Some people's homes are terrible, but the idea of a home is something that you should feel safe, secure, and where you belong. Okay? And then who's infected by this symbol? Well, in this case, the dark brothers are. And by dark brothers, we can assume he's talking about people of color. Okay? Other people who have dark skin, like himself, Langston Hughes, who was a black man. Okay? In the text, Using the dissection of the symbol, the characters, and the effect on the characters determine the theme that the author is constructing. So, A House in the World addresses the oppressive effect of racism, the white shadows of systemic racism that affects the lives of people of color, which leads many to believe that racism is inescapable. Even in Harlem, where you have a black neighborhood, black people live there, right? Oh, but I don't know if you knew this, but during the 20s, all the businesses, though, were owned by white people. They might have black employees, but the white shadows were over them, and the white owners paid the workers very little. So, like, even in what was considered to be a black neighborhood, the white shadows fell over them, and it was oppressive. This poem's not really about a house; it's about a community, a place, looking where white people and their systemic racist system wouldn't negatively impact the black people who live there. Okay, look at this poem. Let me just get rid of this. You can show the floating video again and more. Okay, cool. Hide window. Thank you. Doll by Rennie Sparks. Falling snow spun above the road, winding through the dark woods where my pickup stalled. Falling snow hissing through the air, painting my windows white, so the trees disappeared. Even though I started to feel cold and I was far from town, I just sat there in the dark. On one surface, this is just a poem, could be just a poem about his truck breaking down, and kind of just looking at the beauty of snow. Or it could have a very deeper figurative meaning to it. Falling snow. Obviously, the catalyst of death winding through. This could be like life's journey. He's winding through the dark woods. He's going through his life's journey. Dark wood now is old age. It's the idea of the sun came up, the sun was high, noon, the sun started to set, and then it started to become dark. That's old age. That's life. His pickup. That's his body. That's his life. Okay, my pickup stalled. All right. Death is coming on to this person who's near the end of their life's journey because they're old, and their pickup truck, their body is now breaking down. The windows white, painting my windows white. This is old age, sickened state. White, maybe like the white horse, the pale rider, the apocalypse, all right, which brought disease. Trees disappeared. This is the coming of death. It's all starting to fade away. Cold. It started to feel cold, meaning oncoming death. People are always like, like, oh, it's so cold. Like, and they dead. They dead. And they dead. And they died. So cold is even though I started to feel cold, that's I'm starting to die. And I was far from town. I just sat there in the dark, end of life. But even though this poem is about the end of one's life, the tone is not full of fear, and the tone is not sad. The tone is just matter of fact, and it's almost like reflective. Car stops. It's painted white, but it's still pretty though. It's nice. And even though I started to feel cold, I just sat there, and I was okay with this. It's like they let go, and that they went into death peacefully. So you can talk about the symbolism, you can talk about the theme, and you can talk about the tone and how all those contribute to the meaning of the poem. Okay? That's essentially what you're going to do next week. Now, this week you're going to read and watch these analysis videos on these poems, okay? And read the essay 2 poetry packet. So if you go back to our week 3, these poems right here, neutral tones, spring and fall, madam and her madam. I want you to read those. Click here and read them. And watch the neutral tones analysis lecture. Watch the spring and fall analysis lecture. Watch the madam and her madam analysis lecture after each poem. And they're separate poems. You can read one and then watch the video, read one and watch the video. And in it, I'm doing exactly what you're going to be doing for Essay 2 on your own, okay? And so once you follow those, once you read those and watch the videos, you can go ahead and open up this packet of poems called Female, Queer, and Black Perspectives in Poetry. And so these are poems that deal with women's issues. These are poems that deal with that are written from the LGBTQIA plus perspective, and these are poems that address race. You can read these and see which three you would like to work out. And I'm gonna analyze 3 random ones next week in our live lecture for next week. Okay. Alrighty. If you have any questions about these, be sure to just reach out. Okay. Bye.